In Dr. Morris's book, she talks about how there's no throwaway kids. What are some ways that we can reach the hard to reach kids, the disengaged kids?
Well, the biggest thing for me is throughout the year when they are here, you have to make connections. You got to be outside your classroom. Principal, vice principals, they got to be outside. They can't be stuck in their offices behind closed doors all the time. But then, you got to go out. Those kids that we know are going to struggle. I mean, especially at the high school level, you get these kids, and there is a history out there. You don't want to use that history to make judgments about them as far as what you can expect out of them, but there is a history. Hey, this kid has struggled, so you do all that work early. You might have freshman transition programs. You find what things that they like to do. Any little thing that gives you a connection to them, and you build a relationship piece. The relationship piece is critical to every aspect. It's my number one thing is what I believe in, is building relationships. It's just like with adults. Like, have a good relationship, you can get a little bit more out of them. Because there's a belief, some people believe, like, if you discipline them, then you damage a relationship. But it doesn't have to be that way. Yeah. And so even the few discipline things that I've done this year, we start out the conversation with, hey, we might have, I might have to give you detention or in-school suspension or whatever that discipline consequence might be. But as soon as we're done talking here, like, I've forgotten it. Yeah. I'm not going to carry grudges. The door's open. You can always come back here and have a cool down period if you're getting ready to blow up to prevent something in the future. You can come in here and talk about, basketball or whatever it is you like. We can have those moments because, like I said before, you spend that 5 minutes so you don't got to spend an hour later doing the discipline piece. And this is the toughest thing for teachers because teachers have everything thrown on them. They got to be the school psychologist. They got 20 kids in the classroom they have to worry about, but they also have to worry about the one that's losing their mind. And, he's a little bit low, so he might act out. So they got to worry about that kid and then try to figure out, well, why is that kid acting out? How can I reach that kid? How can I keep him in the classroom and not kick him out? And then finally you lose your cool. Got to go. Kids got to go.
Yeah.
Got to get him out for the benefit of the other 19.
Yeah.
And when that kid comes back, now that teacher has to have some type of restorative conversation with that kid that teachers don't know how to do. They just don't. And, sometimes why can't you build relationships? Well, they really don't know. So I've been in some school systems where they actually have like a pamphlet, like these are 4 or 5 just questions to ask your kid when he comes back. Okay. After he's been in in-school suspension, he comes back the next day. Maybe you catch him in the hallway. Maybe you get him as soon as he comes off the bus. And you just have a conversation with him and let him know or her know, hey, it's over. Like, I'm the adult. I'm not carrying any grudges, no matter what you said to me. And then you move on. And the other big thing for me, too, is the adult has to use an opportunity when they make a mistake to own it and share that with them publicly. If you blew up on a kid, then no matter what that kid did, you need to apologize. Yeah. And you need to say, look, you yelled at me, so I yelled back, and I shouldn't have yelled back. And you need to own that. And when kids start seeing adults take ownership of their own mistakes publicly, especially in front of other kids, then the trust factor gets strengthened. That relationship gets strengthened. And you have to own mistakes in front of kids.
You're modeling.
You're not perfect.
Good behavior for them. Yeah. And then, like, you got kids that aren't necessarily like gone, disengaged. They're disengaged, but they're not out. They're not pushed out of the school. But, like, they're just kind of skating along, Like, there's kids that are taking classes that are not challenging. So, like, what are some ways, and you and I have talked about this a little bit prior to that, but what are some ways that you can get kids, more engaged in, like, advanced classes, like DE classes, AP classes, and get them to go beyond just showing up and getting in class and participating in the lesson, but challenging themselves?
Well, that goes back to the relationship piece. There has to be some teachers in their history that should be able to tell, like an 8th grade teacher should be able to tell, hey, he struggled right here in this part of math, but he was really good in this part of math. And if we really prod this kid or say, hey, you can do this, and he saw some, whatever glimpse of success, use the success to build upon success instead of you did this wrong. Like, I really like coming from an area of positivity. You did this wrong, and we got to fix it. Well, what are the different things throughout history? You know, I'm a big history teacher. Throughout history, I try to look at the successes. What did they do right that I can mimic? Or what can I build off of because they've already done something right? So certainly a kid that has a D in a class has done something in that class worth some type of, pat on the back. And then you use that to say, look, you can do this, you can do this. You might need a little support. I'm a big fan of, telling people, like, when you support, some people, you give them all these supports, they can't do anything, but it's a support to give them a lift up, not a lift over.
Yeah.
And that's pretty much it.
It's kind of her job, too.
Yeah, you find something that they're strong at, or saw some success. Because even if they make a little bit of success, and my wife is right now, she left her English job at West Point, but she took a job working with some kids that really, really struggle. And the biggest thing they struggle behaviorally, they struggle with attendance, and they struggle academically. And she's making less money, but she loves it more because the little gains that she sees, get her motivated to come to school every day. And then when those kids that struggle so bad see a little gain, then they want to come back. But if they're constantly, you failed, this ain't working, whatever, and they had two kids that just take their English writing SOL that have never passed an SOL and got their scores back actually yesterday or Monday. One got a 498 and one got a 478. And they've never passed an SOL before. It's just, you have to build on any little success that you have, use that to be your foundation.
Absolutely.
Well, as a teacher, the first thing you need to have is forgiveness. Every day you walk in that door, you need to leave what happened the day before. Well, to be honest, what happens in the classroom, I know one of my students said, Miss Robinson, how can you help him when he just cuss you out? I say, sweetie, I said, just like a mom, a teacher has forgiveness, and we let it go, and we deal with the child. Not what they just did, whether it's disrespectful, wrong, or whatever, we let it go. Because we look at the possibilities in a child. And if, as a teacher, if you look at the possibilities, you never go wrong. So we let it go and deal with what the child needs. And then we go to wherever that child is. Because every child is different. And we don't know what they're dealing with at home. We just deal with the now, and as I said before, all of their possibilities. Because a lot of times we can see where the child can go, even though the child can't see it.
Yeah, don't hold grudges.
No, I mean,
don't
you
take it
can't, because,
personally,
yeah, we're the example. What mom hold grudges against her child?
Right.
Her child could be the worst bully in the world, but that mom loved that child no matter what.
Yeah.
No matter what.
What do you think, Mr. Robinson?
My thing is, I know y'all know the kids better than I do, but I'll try to talk to them and see what they want to do. Try to encourage them. Say, well, if you want to do that, this is what you need to do.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, nowadays things have changed so much. Used to be the military would take anybody. They don't do that anymore.
Yeah.
That's right. That's right. They got their picks. You're right, honey.
I mean, everybody want the cream of the crop. They want the best they can get.
Yeah.
And if you're not putting out, so I try to encourage them to do your best. And if you want to achieve something, you need to know what courses you need to take to do that.
Yeah.
Well, how do you know if you don't try?
Exactly. Yeah.
I mean, you got to put an effort forward. And I mean, anything is going to take work. Last year, a lot of kids said, once I graduate, I was doing government. Once I graduate, I won't have to learn anymore. I said, life is a learning experience.
They just don't know.
Every day is a learning experience.
It sure is.
And you're going to have challenges that you never thought about when you were young, once you get out there, because I always tell them, when that alarm clock goes off, you can't hit it and go back to sleep when you got a job.
That's
Because
right.
mom and daddy won't be there to wake you up and say, you need to go to work.
That's right.
You have to face those challenges. I mean, if you want to get somewhere, you got to work hard.
Mm-hmm. You're right.
Let's-
And another thing, I'm sorry,
No, you're
is
fine.
that
No.
our kids have forgotten how to dream. For instance, my kids, or should I say, honey, our kids did not ask if I was going to college. They were asking questions, what college am I going to? Because as little people, we groomed in them to always want better for themselves, to want to achieve greatness. And they knew one of the ways they had to go was to work hard at whatever they did. We also taught them how to be competitive too, as little kids and stuff. You know, to always to try to better themselves or just want more. Because like I say, everything is not Parks and Rec. It's not given to you. You got to work for it. But some way, we got to teach our kids how to dream. We also got to teach them that working hard means putting in the time, and that it's a good thing when you take honor classes. It's a good thing when you take AP classes. If we set them up when they enter this building with major clarity, which is a career awareness program, so they can figure out what career they want and then put them on the path to that career, even though it may change from year to year. One year they may want to be, I say, a lawyer. Next year they may want to be a firefighter. But as long as we get them career minded, and see, that's what our problem is. A lot of our kids don't have a clue of what they want to do. But we need to start with career readiness, elementary, because that's when they dream about what they want to be. And then continue each year to meet with them, which they do an awesome job in the middle school, meeting with them with major clarity. And then we continue it up here, because that would should drive their classes and stuff. And then they see why they need to take an AP class or honors class, because it's going to get them to their objective or their goals. And see, that's the thing. If you don't know where you're going, you're going to be blinded.
You know, just like in sports, we make the competition. We were talking to Mariah, our youngest daughter, the other day. She talked about when they were in elementary school, they did the multiplication table, and you would get a ribbon.
Yeah, she wanted that ribbon.
The same thing. You're competing against one another academically.
And it's nothing wrong with that. Because she wanted a ribbon, so which means when she got home and finished her work, she said, Mom, we got to go over our multiplication table. And they would time them, have a sheet, and I would copy the sheets and give it to them. And I said, okay, you're doing good. But that's how you get your child ready for life.
Yeah.
That's how you get them ready.
Even in sports, my son asked, I said, what's your best asset in football? He said, my speed. I said, but speed is no good if you don't know what to do.
There you go. There you go.
The climate of the school and the classroom is very important. Just, you know, when the kid walks in, do they feel safe? And when they come in your classroom, do they feel welcome? That helps a whole bunch.
Yeah.
You know, making that connection they talk about helps a whole bunch. Having engaging, relevant lessons that the kids can apply to life and can see how this will help them with their future or what they want to be. All of that helps, but I'm also well aware that there are circumstances that are often, try as we might to connect them with a counselor or social services, becomes very difficult. And but sometimes a kid, you know, the school is where a lot of the problematic areas that may be outside of the school can be identified.
Yeah.
And at least we can try to link to some resources to help serve the child, you know, holistically.
So we become part of the solution.
Yes.
Yeah. Not part of the problem.
Yeah.
You know?
I would hope
Absolutely.
so. Yeah.
Yeah. How do we make, you know, our DE and AP, how do we encourage more kids to take them, or how do we make them more accessible?
I think, again, some of that, I think, comes from relationship to when you identify a kid and who, it may not even be in your class, but you identify a kid who you feel has a lot of potential. There's nothing wrong with just telling them, you know, informally, hey, you know, maybe you should try this or that, and explain to them the benefit of advanced classes and how it can get them a head start on their future and just push them a little more. Also, I think educating home is big. sometimes kids won't push themselves because people, like parents, feel like, well, if they take these advanced courses, they may get a lower score. Let me just do them I won't say easy way out, but you know what I'm saying. So a lot of it may be educating home, educating the child how this will benefit them. Even like with a DE course, to save them money. Lots of money is saved.
absolutely.
Oh my
Yeah.
goodness. And there was a program called, I hope I'm not taking too long.
No, no, absolutely.
Gear Up. It was a Gear Up.
You have all the time you want.
There was a wonderful program called Gear Up that, I think it was called Gear Up, that we got a grant for in another county where I worked. And they offered like matching Pell Grants to students.
Oh wow.
But who their target was that middle level kid. And every year they had to take at least one advanced class, and they were given supports. So a lot of times it did turn out to be maybe minority students, but it wasn't necessarily exclusive to them. But I love that they targeted that kid that maybe doing okay,
Yeah.
but they needed a little bit more. And if they went like all through all 4 years of the cohort or whatever they got in Pell, they would match them.
That's
But
awesome.
I think a lot of kids in that particular county probably would not have taken a DE or an AP course without that. But again, they also provided support.
Yeah.
Mhm.
I like what you said about educating home, because I was talking to some colleagues, and they point out, like, you know, that if the parents had a bad experience in
Oh,
high
yeah.
school,
Oh yeah.
then that you know, affects their perception of the school,
Yeah.
especially if it's like the same school that they went
Yeah.
to.
Exactly.
You know, and so they might think that, you know, okay, well, you know, to protect my child, make sure that they,
Yes.
right, I need to, when really maybe they're steering them away from some classes
Yes.
they should. So,
Yes.
so talking to the parents is so important. I really like that program thing too. That's something that,
Mm.
you know, it's a huge incentive. And
Yes,
I
it
mean, like I constantly remind the kids, $10 a credit hour.
I
$10 a
know.
credit hour.
I know.
That's $250 on the
Mhm.
I say on the outside, you know, but you know, like
I know.
that's an
It's-
incredible
It
opportunity.
is,
Yeah.
and
And
you
it's
know.
in their head that it's subclass that they can't. Well, it's not in their head. It's something that they've been conditioned, that they've been taught.
Mhm.
You know, that
Mhm.
students think I'm in this track or that track.
Mhm.
You know, no,
Mhm.
that's made up. There's no
Yeah.
such thing
That's right.
as an
That's
AP
right.
or a DE or an honors kid. It's all people.
That's right.
Yeah.
Well, one thing that we had said that really resonated was it's all about building relationships. And so starting those relationships from the beginning, I think, is key, because they know when it's fake and when it's forced. So if they start acting up and then you start building a relationship, you're already too late.
So get lead with that.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. Go ahead.
Now, I was just there's those kids that we like. I don't think any of us like have ever intentionally given up on a student, but you have those students that you like subconsciously give up on. You're like, okay, I gotta like stop putting effort in, but you can't think like that, because you have to like keep trying, and then if you keep trying, they will keep trying. They will realize like, oh, she hasn't given up on me yet, so I guess like I can't give up yet.
And they do notice things like that.
Yeah.
I think every educator experiences that phenomenon where you come in at the beginning of the year and you got to maybe, you know, 2 or 3 weeks, and then all of a sudden you see a kid, you know, start popping up as absent, and then you never see that kid again.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
And you're like, well, what happened? You know, and you know, could I have built some inroads with that child? You know, could I be, you know, sometimes it's beyond our control, but Dr. Morse does mention that, you know, one teacher can serve as an anchor, right, and keep a kid in school. So, so let's skip actually down to number 2, because we're talking about relationship building.
It's a tough position. I mean, as an adult, we know how important it is.
Yeah.
And their perspective is very different a lot of times. And especially this particular year, they had, they got out, they started getting into the work groove, and they're happy there. And they maybe didn't enjoy school very much to start with, or it was hard, or, and now they've got something that they're successful with. And what do they need this for? I mean, they're convincing them that at some point things could change.
Yeah.
not something they're always ready to hear. When not being as successful this year as we would have hoped necessarily.
It's been tough.
It has
Yeah.
been very hard. I mean, and with the virtual option, we even have, if they were in the building, we would have more of the relationship thing, and more of the, connection, I suppose. But when it's virtual, especially when they don't turn on their cameras, I mean,
Yeah.
it's really are you there?
You know.
It is what Jeannie always said, and I mean, when she wanted to come off 4x4 block, I was like, no, it's better for kids to just have 4 things to concentrate on and to get 4 credits, when things are going well, instead of having to, if something goes wrong at any point, at least you can salvage something from it, or you can read. So from my point of view, 4x4 is amazing, but I know, but she's, I mean, it wasn't just her. I'm sure there were other reasons, but that you needed to have that to go through, and I see that. I mean, I do understand that can make a big difference to things,
But having that personal connection with them, having that relationship,
yes, shorter term
Yes.
goals.
Such and that, and just understanding their, their unique sort of circumstances and their motivations, and
Well, I mean, there is only so much we can do.
yeah,
I mean,
absolutely.
I know there, like a lot of kids don't want to go into the military right out of high school, but then they get hungry, or they get children, or they understand that they need health insurance, and so a lot more kids then come back to it later because they recognize the benefits of the lifestyle. I guess my personal philosophy is, I mean, it really depends on what they want to do.
Yeah.
I mean, I don't want to say you can do this or you should do this if their current goals don't support it.
Yeah.
So it really, I mean, I know we're trying down in the middle school to make sure that we open their career options to them, to they start thinking about these things earlier, and with the career plans, the state is also encouraging them to do that.
So get them to set a goal.
Right. I mean, that helps, but then life does come, and so with AP is, we don't have any barriers to AP. If
Yeah.
a student wants to take AP, we allow them to.
Yeah.
And I do encourage them, and they tell me no, and I mean, there's only so much you can do with that, because you
Yeah.
don't want to push them into something that they. I mean, yes, we do have support. We assure them that the reason that they're doing it through AP is because their teachers will support them. That but still they have to overcome those things themselves sometimes. I suppose a long time ago now, but I was encouraging her to take DE English.
Yeah.
And she said, she wanted to go to college. She wanted to graduate early, so she could
Yeah.
go to college. I said, well, you could take DE English here. I said, oh no, that's too hard.
Yeah.
It's the same class you're going to have next year. I mean, it's exactly the same. Why is it harder in high school than it is if you actually go to college? But I try to encourage them that they've learned things along the way. They've learned how to be better students. They've learned critical thinking skills. Even if they don't get the college credit, it's still worth the time that it takes, because now you're raising yourself up to greater expectations and more confidence, hopefully, in yourself.
Teaching's 90% relationships. What the kids know of you, what the kids will do for you. It's a relationship. Lonnie has a different way of relating to kids, and you have a different way of relating, and I have a different way of relating, and we got to use our own special way of relating to the kids to show them that we're interested in them, that we want them here and excited about what you do. My goal as a teacher is to treat everyone equally.
Yeah.
So in the classroom, it doesn't matter to me if you're athlete or not. I'm going to treat you the same way, and so I try to kind of keep those two divided. Although you do build a certain relationship with certain kids that you hang out with, on the weekends and all the time, because you're coaching them nonstop.
I think it's a mix, especially for me, because I taught these kids before.
Yeah.
So I've already built relationships with some of them, but I think it's also seeing the change in them from 8th grade to senior year. But like he was saying, I mean, I coached the middle school volleyball team, but even getting out there, say with sports, watching them play the sports, or even like I've been to band concerts, I've been to, when we're in class making material relatable, we can get off topic just slightly, and I'll use, discussing video games. I play video games, so let me hear what you have to say. Can
me
this be
too.
relatable?
Yeah.
I mean,
Yeah.
COD. I
Yeah.
play COD,
Yeah.
and so I think that's one way, and kids get a little shocked
that, oh wow, teachers aren't just these people who sit at the desk and that's all you see them. And when you see them out in public, like, what are you doing at Walmart? I shop at Walmart too. Well, I think music too. I mean, it helps that I have kids around the same age.
Yeah.
So sometimes when they'll say a comment or like they were picking their senior quotes, I knew immediately what they were talking about. I'm like, oh, okay, thank you, Nicki Minaj.
Yeah, that surprises them too.
Yeah.
So I think getting to know the student individually and like what their interests and passions are to try and connect with them like on a human level is, I think, how you make them feel is more important, because you can't really teach somebody until they feel accepted and
Absolutely.
can buy in.
I think the number one thing we have to do is just develop a as much as practical and professional, we have to develop a personal relationship with them, some type of rapport. I have a kid beginning of this year that, of course, I'm new here, and just disengaged until we got back in person and I could get a little banter going before class and slowly draw the student out. And now it's just, seems very happy, engaged with my class. So I think just that personal touch makes all the difference in the world for so many of these kids.
All right, well, with wrestling and some of the sports that I coach, generally what I'll do is recruit them out to see where their issues are, have them set some sort of goal, and just try to support them throughout their goal views. Everybody's got different driving forces. I just find it, try to focus on their goals. If I have an athlete that's trying to go on to the next level, generally that's always an incentive. But if you have a really good goal-specific set, you can have a kid say, all right, like for instance, Algebra 2 is very important for being licensed or certified to go to NCAA clearinghouse. So you're like, you may not like school, but you have to have Algebra 2 in order to go on to college or do this outside of here, and you just try to focus on the things that they need to accomplish to reach their goals. Still.
Use the athletics to encourage them to push themselves.
Oh, absolutely.
Yeah, that's great.
In the book, the majority of the young women talk about relationships, and they said one of the main issues that pushed them out of school was poor student-teacher relationships. With that in mind, what are some ways that we can build relationships with students? How do we build rapport, build trust, build good, positive relationships with kids?
Relationships is key,
Yeah.
but diversity, what's good for SPED students, what's good for low SES students, what's good for white students, what's good for black students, what's good for Asian students, it's good for all students.
Yeah.
So all those groups of people benefit when they see positive examples of themselves.
Yeah.
So you include, like we just had Women's Day, right? National Women's Day. You include, but it shouldn't be National Women's Day. Like you include women, prominent women in your lessons all the time. So people can see people that are like themselves, that are successful, that have overcome obstacles. And that's the one thing about the book that I really, there was a lot of very sad stories.
Yeah.
And a lot of it made me think, but I also want, like I said, I want to see like a follow-up book. All right, so out of those kids that struggled so mightily, that were successful, I want to go back and look at those and get their interviews. What part of their school experience helped them become successful? What part of their home experience helped them become successful? And that, earlier I talked about looking from the positive. That's one of those things. Like, hey, let's find out from those kids that statistics say probably not going to make it. They made it. Let's find out why they made it, or what really became the light bulb for them.
Treat it like every day, like nothing happened, and motivate them when they do something good. Because I say, now that's my Charlie. I don't know who I had in my class yesterday, but this is my Charlie. I say, this is the Charlie that Miss Robinson wanted to see. And they would just glow and just let them know it's okay to make mistakes. Yeah. And I talk to my kids about saying, I'm sorry. I say, don't come to me and say, I'm sorry. I said, just because you were made to say it. I say it when you mean it. So we talk about all of that in the beginning. And then I let my kids know I'm human too. If I say something that hurts your little feelings, I say, let me know. I say, it's nothing for me to say, I'm sorry. I say, 'cause one thing I never want to do is make a child feel less than what they are. So we talk about forgiveness and I treat them as if they're family, because I would chew my kids out. And they be smiling at me, and they would say, Miss Robinson, I just love you. I say, well, then, why don't you do my work? Or why don't you behave yourself? Because we like to hear you fuss sometimes. Kids love that. They love you setting boundaries for them. And then you do, because in essence, we like co-parenting, so to speak. I hate to say it, but that's the way we're going with some of our students and stuff. And they respect you for it because they know you got their back and you got their best interest. Parents do too. And they will tell you, I know you want what's best for my child.
I like what you said about letting kids know that it's okay, almost expected from time to time that they're going to mess up.
Yeah,
academically, behaviorally. Like I think
Yeah.
maybe sometimes we create the impression that if you fail an assignment or if you make a mistake, get it like then there's something wrong with you, and that's a very normal thing, especially their age. But
Yeah.
for us too, it's part of any process. So
I think just let them know today is a new day.
Yeah.
We're starting all over again.
Mm-hmm.
Yesterday is gone. You can't change what happened yesterday, but you can make today a better day.
I think it's just in having an overall general respect for their personhood, and that's across the board. Like I try to keep in mind. I'm not perfect. I don't even pretend to be, but I try to treat my students like I want my own kids treated.
Yeah.
And also that does involve tough love and being corrected when they're wrong, because that's what's going to make them better people. But I think a general respect and, things like listening to them when, things are late, at least, when there's a conflict, having a fresh start the next day. Being firm and fair, being consistent. I think those things help a lot. And words of encouragement, I think, go a long way.
let's say that you have, like you said, like you do have to discipline students. So you have that kind of that negative interaction with them, and we know that when that happens, there's a little bit of a cloud. So when that student's coming back into the classroom, what do you do to clear the air and say, hey, you know what, you made a mistake, but people make mistakes, and this is a new day. How do you let that student know that you got a fresh start?
Sometimes I just tell them directly. Like if they're coming in, I'm standing outside the door and they're coming in the next day, I'll just say, hey, we had a rough day, and you sort of understood. Do you understand why I had to do what I had to do? And usually they'll say, yeah. And I say, well, let's get back on track. I don't want to see it happen again. And you just use that tone where they know it's sort of cool and they get past that awkward moment. and a lot of times it depends on what they did. But they get past that awkward moment and then they feel okay. That alleviates that awkwardness.
I think that's really important.
And then you teach to them just like you teach everybody else, and you sort of act like it never happened.
Absolutely.
That's pretty much it.
Definitely. Yeah, I think otherwise it just, because they assume that, we were talking about this earlier, like that, oh, this teacher doesn't like me now.
Oh, yeah, and it has nothing to do with that.
Yeah,
and
exactly.
they need to understand what, you hope to like all your students, and you try to, of course. But I know people have different personalities and stuff, but they should not, in a great sense, they should not take discipline. They should take it personal in one sense, but it has nothing to do with how I feel about you. It has to do with, I need to keep the best environment so that everybody can learn. And also some of the things we do with life skills, like the tardies and stuff. How long would you hang on to a job if you tardy all the time? So, they need to understand why they did what they did, why it's wrong. It has nothing to do with whether I like you or not. It's, you sort of cross boundaries you shouldn't.
I think
making a choice not to treat them any differently after that happens. You know, giving them a clean slate is key. Positive reinforcement.
And I think it's also, this is kind of the opposite of what you're asking, but I think it's important to be able to apologize to your students.
Mm-hmm.
Because I've had experiences where, like, I messed up a grade or I did something wrong, and you have to be able to say, hey, I'm sorry, I messed up. And then there's that culture of forgiveness, and it flows both ways.
That's come up a lot, like forgiveness, clean slate, things like that, because Dr. Morse talks a little bit about how there is a personal aspect to the poor teacher-student relationship dynamic, where a teacher almost feels like they have to, prove a point or get even, and a lot of times,
let go of that.
yeah, like a lot of times we have to swallow our pride a little bit. And when a kid, remember our clientele,
Right.
they don't have, they don't necessarily make the best decisions, at their age.
And I also think it helps to see us mess up too sometimes.
Absolutely.
To see here's this adult and they're doing well, but they make mistakes too and they learn from it, which is important.
I like self-deprecating humor a little bit.
Yeah.
Like it's okay, like you mess something up and you joke on yourself a little bit, and sometimes that can backfire on you, but I think a lot of times it's good.
It was interesting. One day, my kids were sitting here and they asked me something and I was like, oh, I'm such a loser. And they freaked out. They were like, no, you can't say that about yourself. And I was like, you say that about yourselves all the time.
Right, yeah.
And they were like, oh, I guess we do say that about ourselves. I think, what is it? Peyton calls it burning 5 minutes, where she talks about just building time into your schedule to just talk, to just have day-to-day conversations.
Yeah.
Because that's, you can build a relationship over Shakespeare, but it's harder.
Yeah.
But just talking about their jobs and their family and things. And
finding commonalities is really key as well. What do you have in common, or what do they have in common with another student? Get them to start talking.
Absolutely.
Well,
That's
I have
an
a
AP
student
kid,
who
right.
they will not do work. They won't even attempt it. And the thing that they keep saying is, I'm just too stupid for that. And so over and over again, I'm like, you are not stupid. We have to get rid of that. If you just applied yourself, if you just tried, I know you can do it. So being that positive reinforcer is key.
I do think most people take it and move forward. I mean, I really don't think that most people let it be a thorn in their side. Just assuring the student that, we love you, we don't like necessarily what you did, but, we still, you did what you had to do, we've gotten past it, and we're moving forward. Yeah. So trying to assure them that we don't see them any differently, and if they're angry with me, certainly we talk through that, and apologies go a long way. And what's worst is the times you hurt somebody's feelings and you don't even know it.
Yeah.
So now they're responding to you in a different way. You have no idea because they aren't communicating that with you.
Yeah.
I haven't really had to do that this year because I haven't written any
Yeah,
referrals.
a lot
But I
of-
know
yeah.
when I was at St. Clair Walker, there was one student in particular where, he was rough for all the kids. All the teachers. And I ended up having to send him out. And he ended up being suspended for a day. Came back in and he had what was called it's like bring back meeting. You sit down and to introduce him back into it. He automatically had this, he shut down. He was like, you're never going to look at me the same way. And I said, listen, you're in 8th grade. You're a kid.
Yeah.
And we all make mistakes. Nobody's perfect. We need to move on further from this and start afresh, start anew, and just keep going. It did work out. By the end of the year, I still keep in touch with him now. By the end of the year, he was giving me a hug at graduation. So, it's the idea that I don't hold grudges, especially against children who make a mistake. Everybody makes mistakes. I'm not perfect.
I think that you got to hold every kid to the highest expectation in your class, and if they don't meet it, they're going to be held accountable. But again, every day is an etch a sketch. So when that day is over, once that thing's done, you shake it, and they got a new opportunity. You have a new opportunity, and I think it's really big when you mess up. I think of a girl that I taught a few years ago. She was banging this big gaudy ring on the desk. It was irritating me. And I told her in no short terms that she needed to stop banging that big gaudy ring on her desk because it was irritating me. And I found out that was her mother's that passed away that year. So I took her out. I'm not going to do it in front of the kids. But I took her out in the hallway and I said, I was wrong. I was wrong to do that to you. I'm sorry. I know you probably have, I understand your, want for that ring. Could you please not knock it on the desk because it takes me off of my, my ability to think and, do my presentation I'm trying to do, that knocking irritates me. But I'm sorry, I didn't mean to do that. And she said, Mr. Anderson, I understand, and blah, 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 blah. But we had a much, much better relationship after that because I told her I was wrong. That was wrong of me to do what I did. And if you just admit it and move on, then I think that book verified it. It said that, expectation. My expectation for every kid, I don't have any less expectation for my non-honors kid than I do my honors kids. Everyone can do it. It's just a matter of putting forth an effort.
Relationship.
So I guess it sort of depends on where the negativity came from. Like if it's something that you did as the teacher or librarian, like just owning up to that and saying, this is a mistake I made and apologizing and trying to sort of do something to literally make that right.
Yeah.
Like if you did it publicly, your apology should be public. And then conversely, if it's sort of a negative from the student, I think giving them a way to fix that. Like, that was made me unhappy. I didn't enjoy that interaction. And to sort of make up, maybe you could shelve these books for me. Like sort of repairing, like physically doing something to make it better, like you did something.
Like letting them know, like, hey, we're good. There's no cloud hanging over this, like I don't hold grudges.
Yeah, definitely like a weight.
When I was much younger as a teacher, I really struggled with that a lot. And as I got older and just more comfortable with myself and with what we're really all about, I realized that again, that personal interaction, but that ability to say, hey, we're all human, I get it. Or, to just be able to talk to the child later and say, here was the situation. I had an issue, not an issue, I had a challenge earlier this year again where I had to get on a kid. Not, I'm way beyond yelling in the classroom anymore, but, I had to correct the child, and then I realized I was wrong. And immediately, in front of the rest of the class, because I made the comment, where other students could hear it, it's important that I make the correction in front of other students. So I said, hey, I'm sorry, I was wrong there. I apologize, I was off base. And the kid kind of looked at me startled. But you could also see the other kids kind of give a little bit of a strange look. So often we correct a child, or we say something to a student in class, and then later we go back and we want to say something more to it if we were wrong. There are times we all lose our temper. But so often we do that privately. That's not the venue that we made the mistake in. So if I make that mistake in front of the class, then I need to make the correction in front of the class as well.
Absolutely.
And that helps the kids see that I'm human, that I'm going to make mistakes. I want to teach them to make mistakes. Have at it, make mistakes. But, there's always that opportunity for redemption, and there always needs to be that human approach. And realizing that we're teachers, we're not perfect. We're going to make those mistakes, and I'm going to admit it.
Yeah.
We also have to realize that it's important for them to save face. That's critical.
Absolutely.
Again, and I've got a lot of years doing this, so I have a lot of stories. But I remember years ago a student coming down the hallway, making noise, goofing off with this other kid, but one was really acting out and inappropriate. And I stepped out of my room into the hallway to speak to the student, and he started giving me back talk right away. Yeah. And so I just said, hang on just a second. And I turned to the quiet friend with him. I said, why don't you go on to class? And the kid turned and walked away, and the other one started to immediately back talk. I said, hey, wait just a minute. And I waited till the kid got down the hall, the door closed, and suddenly you could see this student, the pose left. It was like, oh. Then we could talk one-on-one. But he had to save face in front of his friend. And I knew if I pressed him there, it was just going to lead to trouble.
So I've had lots of situations both ways. So if I have girls, especially if they come out and let's say they're struggling with me and they're struggling with maybe with the discipline side of something, there is a fresh start every year, every season, and there's a 3-strike policy. So it's not like an initial address like, oh, you're gone. You acted bad today. You're out of here. It's like, all right, we talk to them, try to get their head straight, and make sure they understand these are the rules, there are boundaries. Give them another try. Maybe contact parents, and if it happens again, then we gotta kind of separate our ways, but the next year it resets and there's no issue.
What are some ways that we can promote cultural competence in classrooms? What are some ways that just generally we can reduce the number of referrals written in classrooms?
Well, you set your boundaries and your rules and let them be part of the rules and the consequences in the very beginning. And let them know what you will not tolerate, which is, I always say, disrespect and making somebody feel less than what they are. Those are my two what ifs, that will not happen. And like, I just talk to the kids. I talk to them as if they're my own kids. And I always explain to them why. And I tell them, and I say, just because the consequences may not be the same for everybody, I say, because you don't know the whole story. And a lot of times, we don't know the whole story. And as teachers, we just fly off to one end. And you got to know the child. And you got to go to wherever that child is. Because I believe in consequences should fit the crime.
Yeah.
And they should learn something from it.
Mm-hmm.
And then you let it go. So as long as you're fair, and that's one thing about a child, they know whether or not you're being fair.
Yeah.
They know if you're being fair, and if you're being fair, they have no problems with the consequences.
I think if they see you consistently applying the rules, like one time when I was an AP, I was called racist by black girls, and they told me, they said, you only get the black girls on the dress code, and I said no. I just said no, I don't. I said you need to let's rectify the situation. You need to change your outfit. I got a bunch of lip, and they had to change your outfit. Well, I guess about 2 or 3 days later, we had like a see-through study room, like there was glass. They saw me she happened to be a white girl, and she was a teacher's kid, escort a white girl out to get a clothing change. And all of them looked up. I don't know why anyway, just that interaction was very interesting for me. But they looked at me. Everybody looked up. They were like hitting each other like. And then the girl came and hugged me and said, "I was so wrong, Miss Anderson. You're not racist." I'm like, well, I already knew that. But I think when they see you applying the discipline across the board and fair, they know it's not against them. But how it is.
And we don't know. Maybe those girls had most likely, we know that girls are disproportionately affected by the dress code, and black girls especially, and so maybe that they were like had that experience,
maybe,
and were expecting that. That's actually something that
But I didn't. It surprised me. I share their same skin color.
Yeah.
I wasn't gonna give them any special favor because we had, but I wasn't definitely. You know what I'm saying?
Yeah.
And a lot of times it's an excuse. I've been called racist by Chinese people, Asian people, white people, and black people. It's like, and it's sometimes they just throw it out there just because they want to deflect from the main issue. I understand that. Yeah.
If there's an issue, always take them out.
Yeah.
Never address it in a large group, because once you get one-on-one, you can have a better conversation about it and really get to like the point of what's going on.
Yeah, and I think we talked about this in the original discussion, just giving everybody time to cool down.
Mm-hmm.
Like if you say, hey, you want to go like get a drink from the water fountain, like go to the bathroom. Take a walk, and then come back, and I'll have calmed down, you'll have calmed down, and we'll start over from scratch.
And when we were in the discussion before, Drew mentioned, he's like, what works for, we have these accommodations that we make for some students, right? So students have behavioral intervention plans where they're allowed to do exactly what you're talking about.
Yeah.
Well, guess what? That probably works for everybody.
Yeah.
And I'd sure rather have a kid take a 2-minute trip to the water fountain than, if they need that, then get kicked out of my class and miss an entire block and have all that happen. I understand the need to address behavior, but there's a hierarchy.
You had asked, I'm not sure I misunderstood the question, about just like being aware.
Yes.
And I think just having conversations like these and also listening to voices that are different from yours. I mean, especially as white teachers.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Like just getting input from people who are part of marginalized communities.
And just being so open-minded is key.
I mean, I'd like to say that it doesn't. I mean, that we look at the case by case and that it isn't biased, but you just never can tell.
Yeah.
I mean, the comment that Wanda had about making the joke about
Yeah.
Asian students, and it's like I never thought of it like that until
Yeah.
she mentioned it. It's like it was just a joke, right?
Yeah.
But it isn't always.
Yeah, absolutely.
But I mean, I know that. I mean, I don't know how to solve that one. Really.
No, it's okay.
I mean, it's not a. I mean, just to be self-aware, but you can't be overly aware either because you have to still enforce what the rules are.
Oh,
I mean,
absolutely.
so-
Well, and that's another question is just generally how can teachers avoid writing referrals?
Well, that.
Yeah.
And I think that there are ways. I mean, again,
Yeah,
to
absolutely.
make sure you don't push a kid into a corner.
Yeah.
I mean, that's super important is to recognize, that you don't always have to be in control to be in control.
Yeah.
I mean, and to maybe back off or give the kid a break, but try to de-escalate it as much as possible. I mean, send them to me, send them to Susan, send them to somebody.
Yeah.
But don't push it to the point where you can't get back. And so I think that's if people. I mean, when you're in the moment, and it's hard to recognize what's happening. And afterwards, you say, "Oh, if only I had," But if you could think about those things before they happen.
Well, I think you try to relate as much as you possibly can to the kid that you care about. This isn't. We all teach history. We teach government. Government doesn't know skin color. You're trying to teach them history. I try to be excited about all aspects of what you teach. When an African American kid walks in here, I don't want them to say, "Oh, Mr. Anderson's not going to talk about me." I want them, I want
Yeah.
him to feel or her to feel just as much of, passion for the history and their history, because their history and my history and all of our histories is nothing but a story. And if you're passionate, if the kids get into it, I haven't written a detention in probably 3 years.
Yeah.
If you're Miss Fleet's son and you're misbehaving, I'm going to treat you the same way as I'm going to treat some kid that's on the other side of the tracks. And I think the other kids see that. And the other kids see when you don't.
Yeah.
When Miss Fleet's son walks by and he's got a hat on and you tell one kid to do it, but you won't tell that kid to do it, you've lost all those kids that saw that. You've lost.
So, like I said, the classroom, same situation. I have all these pictures hanging up, and it's not just, like he was saying, George Washington, Thomas Jefferson. You've got Martin Luther King, Rosa Parks, Malcolm X. But it's also, like I said, diversity comes in all aspects. I also teach in differentiated learning strategies to cater to those with different learning styles.
Yeah.
So, I mean, that's another issue is that you have some students who are primarily more one race who can listen better than others versus like some who are more tactile and kinesthetic.
Yeah.
And some who are more visual learners. And I'm a more visual learner. So I think in order for them to learn all of this, they have to be able to have all different aspects.
Absolutely.
Oh, so that's a good. First, I think just being aware that there are a lot of other options other than referral.
Yeah.
Like just even using proximity. Like if you just stand closer, a lot of times students remember where they are and will stop the behavior. A call home is also really helpful. And not like a threat, like I'm going to call home, but to literally just remind the student that we're all in it together. This isn't like some separate universe. Home and school are connected. I think if you sort of pre-plan as a teacher, your classroom management can prevent a lot of things that just will never happen.
That's great advice. Yeah.
I think
Have a
like
plan.
literally have a plan.
And I like what you said about calling home. I think that goes back to relationships.
And I would also say never write a referral until after you've called home.
Yeah.
That I just like call and tell them it's coming. I have also sometimes like held that referral, talked to the parent and said, this is what I wrote up. After I hear the circumstances, like, I'm going to hold it. If I send up another one, it will be 2.
Yeah.
but it doesn't have to like go anywhere. And I
Yeah.
think it gives the student a chance and you too. It's no fun to write a referral.
Yeah, absolutely.
I think exactly what I'm talking about now, that personal approach, developing a rapport with students, helping them to understand you care. And, I also talk a lot about family, that we're a family, particularly in a band room.
Yeah.
We're a family. And, just as families have disagreements, you still come back together as a family.
Yeah.
And I want those kids to feel that here. I think Mrs. Fleet said this when we met earlier, that she'd written a handful of referrals over her career. And I'm the same way. I've probably written fewer than, 8 or 10 referrals in 30 some years.
Yeah.
Because I just think it's important to develop that rapport and handle it on a one-on-one basis, or handle it in the moment and diffuse the situation if possible. Again, try and figure out the motivation. And if you know your kids well enough, oftentimes, even though you don't know exactly what's going on at home, you can tell there's something bothering them, there's something off. And again, if you know them well enough, you're going to be able to diffuse that or rechannel that, redirect it into a correction that is kind.
Yeah.
I have had times where I say, hey, so-and-so, step right outside the door for a minute, take a few deep breaths, and let's regroup.
Yeah.
There are other ways to do it.
Well, kids slip up, and especially with sports, you get competitive, you have emotional sides to this. Kid may be having an off bad day, they blow up, you take them aside, try not to have a crowd attached, and then you just kind of address the issue and move on from there. Something that you address.
Yeah.
If it's bothering you, you address it with them, and then develop your relationship and understand the kid, and they'll generally get over it.
Implicit biases are attitudes we all carry. They're stereotypes that we assign to people without our conscious knowledge. So what are some things that we can do as individuals and as school district? What are some things that we can do personally on our own time, and what are some things that school leaders can do to reduce implicit bias in individuals and reduce its impact in classrooms?
Really, to be honest with you, I'm a big favor of, if there was funding, school provided uniforms.
Yeah.
Of
That's mentioned in the book.
Khaki pants or khaki pants and collared shirt, and everyone has it. And then there's enough funding out there. If there was enough funding out there to have that, and then you don't have that issue. I read an article the other day. Roanoke City has actually gotten to some partnership, and they, because the big issue, and it kind of reminded me of the book actually. There's a big issue with attendance there and kids not coming to school. Okay. From all kinds of diverse backgrounds, but basically low SES, because their clothes don't fit and their clothes are dirty.
Yeah.
So they only come to school 3 days a week because that's really only the clothes they have. So they partnered up with this program, and they bought like 25 or 26 washers and dryers that are spread out throughout different schools, and then families can come in and do their laundry for free. I mean, they got to pay for the soap, but they have a time slot that they sign up for to make sure these kids have clothes. But if you can find a uniform that's cost effective, I really like that. But for
So
me, unless
with
it's completely outrageous, like I'm seeing something I shouldn't be seeing, then if it's against the dress code, then you can write them up or whatever, but keep them in the classroom. Like, if you just have a simple conversation and you watch your tone, then you can look, man. It's a school rule, man. Just take your hat off, and they will most of the time. I really have never had an issue with.
But the one time that I saw a student refuse to take it off, it was because his hair, and he knew that if his his friends saw it, then they would dog him all day about it, and he would rather get kicked out of class than take the hat off. And at that point, you're kind of like, okay, well, maybe we can help this kid out and give him some time, give him what he need to get his hair looking right, or to maybe something anyway.
Yeah, the one that used to always give me is, I've been doing it for been in education for 20 years, is the take your hat off, and then the kid takes it off or something, and then like right around the corner puts the hat back on, and then the teacher runs behind him and screaming and ranting and raving, and like, relax. It's kind of what kids do. Let the next teacher in the next hallway catch them and tell them to take their hat off. I mean, they're out of your sight. Just move on. You have other bigger things to worry about than someone's hat.
Yeah.
Well, when you're dealing with clothing,
Yeah.
and in career and technical education, we are preparing them for when they go to work. And that's what I always tell them, to wear appropriate clothing. So it's no question about your intent, because you always want to look professional. Now, if you're talking about hairstyles and everything, that's an extension to who that child is.
Yeah.
Because some can afford to get their hair done every 2 weeks. Some at home learn how to do it themselves because they can't do it, afford to go. So I have no problems with creative hairstyles and everything, because that really isn't who that child is. It's just at that time, because a lot of us look at pictures when we were in high school, like, I know our kids say, why did you let me wear that hair, my hair, the little piece? I said, because at the time, you thought you looked good. And I said, Mommy was going to tell you to, honey, that little piece of hair, but that was their strength at that time. So I let my kids express themselves however they want with, their hair, but I just make sure the clothing is appropriate for school.
And you have those conversations when before, or maybe if there's an infraction,
Yeah.
but keep them in the classroom.
Yeah.
Don't kick them out for something that
No.
is really not,
But I'm gonna tell you what I do is whenever my daughter's not wearing clothes, instead of taking them to like Salvation Army, I take them to the nurse, because they're in good condition. Some of them have price tags on them. Like, I bought that for you, you didn't wear it? Yeah, Mom. And the nurse, I would send the child to the nurse, and they get to pick out something else to wear that they can have that's more appropriate. So that's what I do to take care of that. I don't send them to the office or anything. I send them to the nurse, get something on, they come back in class, learning continues on.
That's great.
Yeah.
I mean, and you're working within, regardless of how we feel about the dress codes, if we work for an organization where they're in place,
Yeah.
we have to work within those limits, whether we like it or not. But like you said, there's ways
Yeah.
that we can keep the kids in the classroom.
Mhm.
Something that I think about too is like the hat rule,
Mm-hmm.
and I think that, like you might have, especially a black female student come in and she could have, her hair wrapped up for a reason, and you know what I mean? And there's a big difference that I think that there's a deficit in understanding there when somebody says, well, you can't wear that, and
I don't mess with the little things.
yeah,
The little things I just let go, because learning is more important. I pick my battles. It's just like as a parent, you pick your battles.
is it worth kicking the kid out of a class for something that it is, and when you get to the bottom of it and find out that they're mortified, they'd rather go to the office than take that thing off.
Yeah. And I don't want to make a child feel uncomfortable and bring attention to something that's not worth it. I just let it go.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
They just feel embarrassed.
Yeah, and I don't want to do that to a child.
I'm just pro-uniform, and that has controversy in and of itself. I'm pro-uniform for a number of reasons, which is beyond the scope of this discussion, this time. But I would recommend, having school shirts, something along those lines. Larger ones for the legging issues, whether the young lady be African American or not African American. Belts for the boys, to pull up their pants. Some schools had little ropes and stuff. And then you run the risk of having the issue escalate. Just like when you ask for a cell phone and they refuse, it becomes a different kind of infraction then. And I've had kids refuse to put on the school shirt, and then it became a different kind of infraction.
Yeah.
And it ends up being, it could be so simple, but then you may want to, I don't think they cuss me. They end up cussing the principal out. Then they're out of school for 3 days. I mean,
over a dress code violation. Yeah, that's
for long-term change, it's going to require a discussion with the parent.
yeah.
Because you're right. We used to have business dress-up days on Wednesday, and literally, and we would teach them how to shop on a budget, how to get some good clothes at the thrift store. Didn't matter. Some of them are not going to go in the thrift store.
Yeah.
I will. I don't have any problem with it. But you get yourself a pair of khakis and a white shirt, and then I see sometimes, stockpile of clothes for those things. People provide that, but it is going to we will have to have conversations with parents, but we also got to be aware that um, parents may not agree with us. I had a student that was 17. She happened to be an African American. We had a great rapport. Um, we had an excellent rapport, and became friends as she was an adult. And I remembered she was very um, top heavy. I'm trying to put it in right terms.
Yeah, no, I understand. Yeah.
And had a very low plunging neckline one time. And I said, because we had a good rapport. I said, "What's going on here? Why you got your stuff hanging out?" That we had a rapport. She said, "My mama told me if I got it, flaunt it." That's a true story. What do you do with that? My
There's so many
husband
things,
can't get into his workplace unless he has steel toe shoes on, safety goggles, and his helmet. It show help them understand that this is life. I mean, you may have one of those jobs where you can wear any and everything, but most of us don't.
For the day.
Yeah, and then I've been teaching a long time. I've seen kids' tennis shoes stolen.
Yeah.
I mean, just so many things that happen that kids teased and bullied because they could only afford Walmart clothes.
Yeah.
Uniforms alleviate a lot of that.
I'm probably on the opposite end of everyone that's like pro dress code. I think it is really unfair, and I think a lot of it is outdated. And I get that we, want them to learn how to dress professionally and respect their bodies, but I don't think that, having spaghetti straps, is a sign of not respecting yourself, or having, rips in your jeans.
And is it worth removing a kid from the classroom?
No.
Never.
No.
Yeah.
Because then they feel ostracized.
Yeah, as long as the important bits are covered, I'm not going to kick you out of my
so
class.
So far
for
as like
dress code.
hairstyles, it doesn't matter.
Yeah.
Some people are just more comfortable in hats.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. I'm okay with telling a student to take it off, but I think when you get to the point where like the kid doesn't want to take it off, you should maybe take a moment and find out why.
Mm-hmm.
You know what I mean? I think there's a tendency to want to immediately be like, we'll go to the office. Well, especially if it's a black student, where, hair is a much more time consuming thing to do.
Mm-hmm.
You know what I mean? Like maybe there's a reason they don't want to take that hat off, so, and I agree with you. Like I'm not crazy about it. We do have it here. I think that there's some latitude, and I definitely never had anybody come and tell me like, why did you throw this kid out of your room? So, but anyway.
I also think it's interesting just because of the masks right now.
Yeah.
I have had several kids who will pull their mask up all the way over their face.
Oh, you serious?
And I'm like,
I'm the opposite.
We're forcing them to wear the mask, but the
Yeah.
masks are causing more of a disruption than a hat ever has.
There are just some things that it would fit on somebody else and it doesn't fit on you.
Yeah.
But I think that you can just wear not cute stuff sometimes. You know, if it comes, that's the choice that I would make if I was, but I'm much older than but it was a choice I would have made in high school too because I don't like to do waves. So I would be personally very cognizant of if I recognizing. But I think that that's part of the point too. This is how mom dresses. This is how I dress.
Yeah.
It's not anything different.
Yeah.
So why is it a problem for you that if my mom thinks I'm fine, why are you having a problem with it? But I still think that to recognize that if you went to church, if different environments have different requirements.
Yeah.
And school is a place you need to be comfortable, but it's not necessarily a place that you have to.
Yeah.
Always be on your best.
That is
torn.
That is not in my pay scale. My
Yeah.
job is to enforce the rules. The school's job is to make the rules. If the parents and students don't like the rules, then they need to go to the school board and have that rule changed. If the parents and the kids want to have hats, they need to go to the school board and tell them. And then they'll put it in the rules. And then it's my job to enforce it because once I start hunting and pecking what rules apply and what rules don't, then I'm no longer following the school's code. I'm following my own independent beliefs. And that's not what we're here for. Any other job you go to, they give you the rules. Your job is to enforce those rules, because we have that here. We have teachers that kid walks by with a hat on. I don't care, but we're paid to enforce those rules.
You know, I have thought a lot about this one
Yeah.
because I do feel like the dress code falls disproportionately on girls,
Yeah.
and disproportionately on girls whose bodies are curvy.
Yeah.
And I've seen kids get called out for something and the student next to them doesn't. It could literally be the same. It's like, it just seems so unfairly applied.
Yeah.
So to me, something really minimal, like doesn't disrupt the learning environment, is appropriate. Like corporations have dress for your day. And I feel like we try and police something that isn't that important. So that may not be a popular teacher opinion, but
No, I mean,
I feel like-
I'm inclined to agree with you in the book, like, is it really worth having a kid miss instructional time because they had a hat on?
yes, or
You
like
know,
they
or
wore what they
because
had
of-
in their closet.
Yeah.
I mean, it's,
Yeah.
not everybody has all the outfits to choose from.
I'm not sure that you were saying edit out, or maybe the word equity wasn't the right one. I think maybe it is the right one.
Yeah.
And I think, rather than applying it equally, everybody is, I know it's an issue that bothers some people, but again, we have to know these kids. We have to know something about their background, where they're from. Not every kid has the means to have multiple wardrobe items, and et cetera. I mean, while we don't want there to be an utter distraction, and we don't want to embarrass a child by, in any way, there has to be a kindness to the way we approach that, and an understanding that maybe this child, maybe these parents are doing the best they can. And I know a number of years ago the question came up about dress code, and I can't remember the exact item that was being worn, but I remember being told, chatting with a couple of parents at the time, and they said, look, you can't find this for teenagers. They don't want to look like they're a 30, 40-year-old person. They don't want to be wearing fashions that are...
There's a lot of social pressure.
There's a lot of social pressure. And I just think, again, there has to be an equity lens attached to that. We don't want things that are flagrantly distracting.
Yeah.
But we have to also understand that, one size doesn't fit all. But we also have to be really careful in that as well, as not to get into body shaming and making especially young girls feel uncomfortable in their own skin.
Yeah.
And that's a huge issue. Student A can be wearing something, student B can be wearing the same thing, but student B is deemed to be a distraction while wearing that, and student A isn't. That's just incredibly unfair.
Yeah.
I mean, and there, I don't know where I'm going with this, but
No,
there has to be a huge measure of kindness, of compassion, and common sense applied.
Well, as far as hairstyle, body type, things like that, I mean, a kid's a kid. They're going to have to express themselves some way or another.
Yeah.
But for us, being a PE teacher, we have a uniform that the kids wear, and that's just to get rid of cell phones and injury. So the kids dress out, come out into the gym, and they're all wearing the same thing. So it's really a non-issue for us. Same with sport. When you're in sports, kids are wearing a uniform or practice clothes, and it's just fitting for the environment. So I don't really particularly deal with that so much.
Implicit biases are attitudes we all carry, they're stereotypes that we assign to people without our conscious knowledge. So what are some things that we can do as individuals, and as school districts, right? What are some things that we can do personally on our own time, and what are some things that school leaders can do to reduce implicit bias in individuals and reduce its impact in classrooms?
Stuff like this. Like, you have to own, you have to be knowledgeable about it, read up on it. You have to have professional development on it, but you have to own it. You have to understand yourself. Like, hey, I had a two-parent household, upper middle class my whole life. I know I don't have a situation like many of our students in this county. So I don't know what they went through. My son, plays basketball, and one of the things he was one of the things, like very early on, like we went to Richmond to go play, and I got him on a team in Richmond so he could experience the culture there, because his group in Williamsburg they all looked like him.
It's more homogenous.
Yeah, they all looked like him, and he went to a situation where no one looked like him.
Yeah.
And I did. It was purposeful by me to do that.
Yeah.
Because I wanted him to be around people that don't look like him and people that don't have the same experiences.
And I think.
And then the biggest thing I got from that is those kids. Like we had those kids and families over our house all the time, and they said the same thing that I'm saying about us going to Richmond. They said this has been great for our kids.
Yeah.
Because they're seeing something different that they would not have seen.
Yeah.
So, it's about being able to understand your own body. Like my dad was a racist.
Yeah.
Like
I
the stuff he said to me growing up was off the charts.
I have plenty of people like that in my family.
I never understood it because I grew up in Northern Virginia, and our school population was 50% African American. Yeah. And half my friends were African American, and so he would say things to me when he would get angry at me, and say every derogatory term in the book, and I never understood it. And I said, and I love my father, but he was a racist.
Yeah.
Up until the very end, and that's one of the things at the very end. On his deathbed, he was like, he brings me in, and literally, 24 hours before he dies, he's like, "Don't be like me."
Yeah.
This hate gave me cancer.
Mm.
And it changed me. And I'm not going to be that way. And I'm not going to let my family be that way. Because I knew that about myself. Like, he finally, it took him all those years to finally, this is what did it. I was angry my whole life. And that's what gave me cancer. That's what he said.
It's,
Sorry.
No, you're good, because it makes me think about, like, I think a lot of people that have maybe grew up like you did and like I did are having to have some of these sort of moments of, reckoning with people that are close to them, like I had it with my parents over the summer, and I'm, not talking to my grandfather on my dad's side right now for similar reasons, and that's hard, but like you said, like you make a decision, right? Like, this is a generational thing, racism, and it stops with my generation, and I think, like you said, a big part of it is just you and me sitting in here. When I was a kid, my parents never talked to me candidly about race. They talked to me about looking both ways before I crossed the street. Mm-hmm. Not taking candy from straight, but they never said, hey, there's different people in the world with different culture, and that's okay. How are we prioritizing conversations with our children, right? I appreciate you sharing that. That's powerful stuff, man. That's, that hit me too, because that makes me think of, things going on right now in my own family. These are trying times, for sure. And so, just wrapping it up, I mean, what are your big takeaways? What was the kind of as far as the book goes, maybe the biggest takeaway, or how it's impacted you, or something that you read that really resonated? Sorry, that's
I
a
think
really
the implicit
open-ended
piece
question.
is
Yeah.
like understanding that about yourself
Yeah.
and really bringing that to the forefront. Like recognizing, like that's half the battle. Like recognize that I'm different and I don't know everything about kids or where they come from and how those little things, triggers that you never had in your own life, like might set somebody else off or a kid off, and then really being part of that forgiveness piece. Like as soon as that outburst is over, like the adult has to get over it and move on, and then open those kids back up. Like bring that kid right back in.
There's a temptation to take things
One of the
personally.
that's
yeah.
the other thing that I got out of this elite travel basketball group that we have is that coach, after basically for like 2 years, because the whole group's been together for like 2 years, he would bring them all in and he'd say, repeat after me, I love you. And they'd say, I love you. And there ain't a damn thing you can do about it. and like they ended it with, like, he told them that every practice.
That's great.
So you can get mad at me because I'm making you do these 20 sprints. I'm making you do these up backs. I'm doing all this stuff, and you're angry at me right now, but I love you, and there ain't a damn thing you can do about it.
That's awesome.
That's really my philosophy when I deal with kids, even with discipline. Like, no matter what, like, I got into education because I love kids and I want to make an impact on their lives. And if I have to discipline them, I have to discipline them, but they're going to know I love you, and there ain't a damn thing you can do about it. So when you come back in here tomorrow, if we ever get out of COVID, I'm going to give you the hug, and we're going to move on. And if you need help, you just walk right back in this door, and we're going to work it out.
And you might think high school students but they're never, they're kids.
Yeah.
Just like the little ones, they need that, man. Absolutely.
If you have biases, and you have no business in teaching, really, you're dealing with the child itself, regardless of the child's background, regardless of who the child's parent is, you got to deal with the child. I think you need to find another occupation if you got a problem with that, because children read you good. And they can tell if you don't like them, if you're being biased toward them, and they're going to prove you right on everything just to say, because they don't understand it's hurting them more. They don't have the maturity to know that. They just reacting to what you're giving them and stuff. So I think what we need to do, have more professional development on cultural awareness to understand the kids and to let other teachers know that just because they come in every day, they clean and they're presentable, don't mean at home it might be a little bit crazy and stuff. So when a child acts out, don't take it personally. Just deal with whatever is going on with the child as much as they will share, or refer them to a professional who can help them and stuff. Don't ever take it personally.
You mentioned, like professional development that promotes cultural awareness. So
Right.
do you mean like actually kind of talking about differences that teachers will experience and students of varying cultural groups say, this is what you're likely to encounter, this is what this particular cultural group values, this is what, how it might affect your relationship with that student. Like make teachers aware of cultures other than their own.
Right.
Expose them to cultures other than their own. So I think that's really the ticket. Go ahead, Mr.
Don't think everybody in that culture is the same.
Right. That's a good one.
A lot of people think because you're black, you do this.
Yeah.
No, we don't. I mean, I remember going up to guys that I went to high school with, and they were white, and we shake hands, and he's the one to do all this stuff.
Yeah, you know what that was?
that was 20 years ago.
I think that goes to toward that implicit bias that we were talking about, where he's like, I'm going to do this because I shake hands with a black person. And I mean, that might have been, I guess like if that was a teacher and a student doing that, that student might be a little put off. They'd be like, what's wrong with this guy? He thinks that all black people shake hands.
And that's a bias. And it's just like the way I talk to my kids is not the way everybody can talk to their kids. And it's cultural. It is cultural. It's just like with a young man, I may say, boy, if you don't behave yourself, and he'll sit right on down. But then if a teacher who was not, he may take offense to it.
Yes, absolutely.
But it's the way we talk to our kids. Yeah. And it's out of love. It's not out of disrespect. But that child may take it out of disrespect. Because a lot of times I could just chew my kids out and they be smiling at me. But you got another teacher talk the same manner, that I do. But it's as if I'm a mother figure. The way they look at it and stuff. But they look at it different. And it's just cultural differences. That's all it is.
And like you said, like if, PD was geared toward maybe achieving some level of awareness about those differences, that would go a long way into kind of ameliorating some of the things like you were talking about.
Yeah,
You know, like
understanding.
the people making assumptions.
Yeah,
You
I
know,
mean, I watched the program, can't remember what it was, but it was about, it was in Alabama, and it was a church, and they were passing out the snakes. Well, the pastor had been arrested, and they stopped his wife driving, speeding. He had made her stick her hand in the cage with one of the biggest copperhead they
oh my
had.
gosh.
It bit her. So
Well,
she was
yeah.
on her way to the hospital. Well, when the trial came up, they had all these reporters from all over the country there. And one of the guys was, I think he was on the city council, and he stopped one of the reporters from New York. He said, "You know, all of us are not like that." He said, "They don't know that in New York. All they were trying to do was sell papers and, whatever." And down in Alabama, these backwoods people.
And then others make a generalization.
Yeah.
There's lack of exposure.
Yeah, it is. It is.
Yeah.
And the same thing. I mean, different cultures. Just like they always talk about black people do this, white people. Chinese people. I was watching last night. They had 30 for 30 Bruce Lee.
Yeah.
And they were talking about how when he came to the United States, the way Hollywood picked Asians. And one of them was Mickey Rooney was dressed up and made up to be Asian.
Mm.
And how they made him look dumb and all that kind of stuff. That's the thing, certain people
Negative
are
race,
stereotypes.
negative race stereotypes. Yeah. That's unfortunately something we still deal with. It's still something that happens.
I think that we really just need to spend time with people that are not like us more regularly. Even just in social outings or church or any place like that. And I think that's one of the big things. I think it's just like when it crops up in us, and we all have them. Some of them, we all have them. We need to sort of be able to identify it and see it for what it is, and just watch our actions. There's nothing. I don't think the big solution is like diversity training, but I think diversity training combined with some other things, it won't hurt.
Like exposure.
Mm-hmm. Exposure. Exposure.
Like you said.
Yeah.
Just exposing yourself to.
That's right.
Cultures.
Yeah.
Language groups that are different than yours. Yeah.
I even loved one activity that the music teacher did one year. Not necessarily here, but I remember me and my husband have always listened to a wide variety of music, and even when I share with the kids, I've been to a Kiss concert. They look at me like, I'm sorry, edit that out, laugh out. That was too wild.
No, that's great though.
But one teacher made kids listen and learn and appreciate, like if you were into hip hop, you had to listen to country.
Yeah.
And I heard the kids talking about it, and they were just like, "Why gotta listen to that white people music?" But even an exercise like that, I think just broadens. Yeah. Both, not just the black kids, the white kids too, but I just think it's interesting. Just things like that. But
music, I think, is a great way to bridge. That's a great vehicle for bringing.
Think about what used to happen. We watch a lot of music biographies. Think about what used to happen when they had the segregated concerts with the rope.
Yeah.
A lot of times by the end of the concert, the rope was down and everybody was dancing together.
It's funny because I was just teaching about the Roaring '20s, and I was telling the kids you'd go to New York, right, to the Cotton Club, and that would be segregated.
That's right.
And so you'd have black entertainers on stage, white audience, but then the Cotton Club would close, and everybody would go to the speakeasy, and everybody was dancing and listening to bebop jazz, and and so I like that. Yeah, that's
I think music was one of the main. I don't know, when I look at those biographies and those old, it's like, wow, music was really used to bring people together. Yeah. It really was.
Yeah. That's a neat activity. And just to wrap things up, has this book impacted your practice? Is there kind of one thing, one big takeaway that you had from it, or maybe something that really struck you?
It was a great reminder. It brought it back fresh again. That we really have to sort of try to, as much as we can, take into the account who kids are as individuals and like sort of like where they come from.
Yeah.
And to never forget that when we're teaching. And sometimes we can get so busy, and the kids aren't going to tell you everything. It'll come out in different ways, and sometimes you'll see. But just a reminder, just be mindful of this, and as you interact with them, and don't make assumptions that everything is wonderful and everybody has the same foundation, everybody has the same common belief or whatever. So for me, it was a good reminder.
Yeah. Absolutely.
Mm-hmm.
And see the child behind the behavior.
That's exactly it.
And
sometimes it's hard because people hear that and think you're going to excuse poor behavior, but that's not what it means. I don't think that's what it means at all. Because we have so many examples of people who have really overcome so much.
So I'm just going to read straight from what we said here,
Yeah.
and we can expand on it.
Yeah.
Talking about things like this is so key to have a large discussion, or small, about things like this. Be wary of assumptions. Make sure you set them aside. Take up opportunities for broadening your cultural experiences, which is what you touched upon.
Mm-hmm. And I think having, I don't want to call it meditative, but like taking some time to yourself and thinking, okay, why do I feel that way? Why do I feel like this kid has given up? What messages are they sending me? What messages am I sending them? And just analyzing why you think the way you think.
So
becoming more
introspect
introspective.
a little
Yes.
bit. Yeah. Reflect on your, look back and kind of arch your quarterback it a little bit. Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
And I think
absolutely.
constantly questioning yourself is key as well.
Mm-hmm.
Like, why did I do this? Why did I have this reaction? And, really just essentially getting to the root of things.
Absolutely. Yeah, that's great. And then, finally just wrapping things up, has this book impacted your practice? Is there anything that you're like, oh, I hadn't thought of that, or that's interesting, I'm going to apply that in my classroom? What are your takeaways?
One of my takeaways was the difference between some of the things that had happened in this book between what I've seen here.
Yeah.
This is a much more stable, calm environment.
Mm-hmm.
In the half a year I've been here, I haven't seen anything like that.
Yeah.
That makes me think, hopefully we're doing things right, but there's always room for improvement as well.
Yeah, I've tried to just be more aware of race specifically.
Yeah.
Like not trying. I think there's a difference between saying like I'm colorblind and like just trying to. There's a balance there, but just thinking like, okay, am I lumping kids together in certain groups?
Yeah.
What do I notice? What patterns do I notice when I do lump them together? Why am I doing that? Things like that. It's so interesting that I'll go to somebody who's been teaching here a long time and I'll say, hey, I'm really having some trouble reaching out to this kid.
Yeah.
And the person who's been here a while will immediately say, oh, well, they've got this family thing going on and that thing going on at home. And I'm like, I had no idea.
Right.
It's a small town, and that does work to your advantage.
Well, I kind of like the mentor or even the department approach where, you have somebody that you can talk to and say, I had this situation. So some trusted person to had a different perspective perhaps, because you may not, the whole thing about the implicit bias is you don't know you have it.
Yeah.
And so talking to other people who can give you some sort of feedback on that you trust and feel safe with. I think is kind of a good, so having meetings each week and say, I had this interaction and it was kind of weird and I don't feel good about it and, what could I have done differently? To always keep an open mind of it's not always them, it could be me. And, and to not say this kid won't, it's more like, what can I do to help promote that, how to fix that. It's not, yes, there are two people involved always, but the only person you have control over is yourself. Right. And so I think that getting advice or just talking about it or just kind of going back and doing the Monday morning quarterback thing. I mean, how do you go back and review things and say, next time I could do it differently? Or maybe I hadn't considered that point of view, and now that I do, I will try to keep that in mind for the next time.
Boy, that is a great question.
Yeah.
And I think reading a book like this is probably a great way to start. Just like even acknowledging to yourself that you have them.
Yeah.
Everybody has them. It doesn't make you a bad person. You pick up those biases and perceptions. So, but I think once you're aware of it, you can have a bias that you don't act on. And that's what I think the important thing is. It's not like your bias. It's like, do you act on it?
Absolutely.
But I've seen like teachers, call on boys more than girls. Female teachers do this, like everybody. It isn't like, I think just being aware of that and making sure you're trying to be as equitable as possible.
So like pause and reflect on your practice. And,
literally while you're doing it, and like what goes well, like try and do that again.
There needs to be a lot in the way of professional development, bringing in specialists in that area to get people to help people to address and to address this issue, but not in a sense that makes them feel like you're accusing them or saying you're guilty of this. We all have implicit bias. And I know for me personally, I did a very deep dive into this a little over a year ago. A very deep dive, and it really opened my eyes to the upbringing I had. I grew up in the Richmond area in the early 60s into the 60s, and there was so much racial tension, so many problems in the area at the time. And I'll tell you, I am plagued by the comments that I still hear in the back of my mind from people that were around me, family members and things, who were just prejudiced, who were bigoted. And I still struggle at times because I still hear those tropes that they would use in the back of my mind. And I think we all have to admit that it's a cumulative effect for a whole lifetime of things we've heard. And where we don't believe certain things, or we believe very differently from the generation that came before us, those comments were still made around us, and it's poison. And until you can identify that poison and see it for what it is, there are a lot of people are going to struggle moving forward or moving on beyond their own implicit bias. And I think we have to accept that we've all been exposed to ugliness. We've all been exposed to these horrible things. But we have to face that and become aware of it and realize or examine very deeply, does it affect our judgment? Have we truly overcome it, or is it always going to be a work in progress? And I think it will. I think it's always going to be a work in progress for everyone.
Yeah, I think a lot of people are having those conversations.
A lot of people. I have colleagues, from other areas and in different levels of education who are really struggling with this right now because their institutions are providing training, and I have a couple of very close friends who are offended by it. And we'll have conversations. And they're talking about, well, why are they attacking me? Why is it? And I finally turned to one not too long ago. I said, why does it bother you? And they really couldn't answer other than, well, it's like they're attacking me. Well, then why do you feel that way? What about your inner feelings are making you feel that this is coming at you? I think this is a challenge that we're going to have to continue to face and a battle we have to continue to fight.
Absolutely.
For a very long time.
I agree with you.
Well, I mean, you got to understand that everybody is not perfect, and that kids are, especially a kid that's under different stresses. Everyone has a story and they have issues, and they might not be able to handle their issue at that time. And you've got to understand, someone may have a lot of wealth, someone may not have any wealth. So just getting kids we've had in school here, we've had kids not have running water, not have certain things that are just basic needs. Understanding that kid might be a little grumpy because they don't have food and water like normal kids do. So just be more understanding to their goals and needs. And
this last one is just a general question about the book. Has it impacted you in your practice? What stuck out the most?
is, I guess one of the things is, because I looked at some of the videos for interviews and stuff, is that it's still prevalent today.
Yeah.
Just because we're in 21st century, don't mean it's any less than it was back in the 60s, the 50s. It's still there today. So it just brought it to the forefront. And that we need to keep on keeping on and doing what we're doing, you know, for all of our kids. Yeah.
I just think it showed me you just treat people like people, not about according to their race or anything. That you treat people like people.
That's right.
You know, the old saying, Mr. Pappas used to say, treat people like you want to be treated.
Conversations alone have been very valuable to me.
That's good.
In the thinking about, you know, I try to think of myself as an open person, as a person who, you know, sees things in a positive point of view. But again, you just never know when these things sneak up on you. You know? So it's really just a big awareness of, yes, we always need to step back and make sure that, you know, just because it's the way we've always done it doesn't mean so we will always have to do it.
Absolutely.
You know, and yes, we tried it differently 3 years ago or 5 years ago or 10 years ago, but things are different now. So maybe it would work now, or maybe it wouldn't work now. So
I think the big takeaway for me was that idea of like you are co-constructing the reality of school with the students, and whether you acknowledge that or not, it is true. The students are making the environment with you, and entering into that with sort of an open heart and being able to share that power and that platform, I think will go a long way of students feeling respected. And I try to do that in interactions regularly anyway, but I think that idea of really bringing them to the table and listening to what they have to say and making a place where everybody feels comfortable.
I just think the conversation we've just had kind of hits the strongest points.
Yeah, I think so. Yeah, the relationship building one, especially.
Yeah.
And, the PD for implicit biases, I think, is a really.
I think that's really the most important. I believe that we need to help people to see that issue and see it in a non-threatening way.
Absolutely. Yeah.
I mean, I've been doing this for 20 years, so I would say that I probably wouldn't change so much. It just reiterates what I'm doing.